that gets me to Mike's question about languages, real quick. So Mike, the key, the big silver bullet answer, languages, you know who does good in languages? Not like that. I always hear about this myth of like the language person, right? There's mythological character, the language guy or the language girl. It just comes easy for them. I've been teaching Greek 17 years and then a year and a half as an adjunct PhD student. I have yet to meet this mythological beast in person. I know two types of people. Three, I know a bunch of types of people, but the one type of person I know who always succeeds in language is the person who consistently works at it every single day and gets really, really comfortable with feeling like they're always like behind the eight ball. And like, they always feel like I'm like a week behind where I feel like I need to be. But then you say to yourself, but you know what? That's the way I felt last week. It's really consistent, sort of showing up every day and learning how to, knowing like you build in times of review, like a certain amount of time of review, you know what, like Brian said, you know what you're studying. You don't waste time reviewing things that you know. And there's all kinds of different tips I could give you for languages and how to get better at them. But the big thing is, if you've started or haven't started, the big thing is there's nobody who doesn't have the intellectual capacity to learn the languages. It's learning how to learn them. But honestly, it's just showing up if there's a class where showing up every day matters, it's languages, right? So if your weekend goes like Friday to Monday, no languages, I can pretty much tell you how you're going to do. So anyway, yeah, the good news is anybody can do it, but it is uniquely challenging. You're right. It's not like your other classes. No. Languages have unique challenges.
When I took Greek 1 with you, I mean, you asked, or you would send us like an email on a random day and say like, what day is it? And then like in the subject or in the body, it'd say it's Greek day. And like, that's all it'd say. Like every day was Greek day.
You don't even need a calendar. When you're taking Greek and Hebrew, you throw your calendar away. Every day you wake up, it doesn't matter. It's Hebrew day.
Yeah, for sure.
Now I'm not discounting Sunday. Don't anybody email me about whether or not I believe in the Lord's Day or worshiping on the Lord's Day. I do. 6 days a week, it's Greek day. There's nothing wrong with reading Greek on Sunday, though.
That's true. All right, let's get to one final one. So, and I think this comes to your reading text, but like, how do you retain or get through information in 8 weeks?
Boom. This is my favorite question to answer. All right. So
you got really excited there.
I'm really excited. I don't know why. It's really late. I've been at this like for a long time, but this is what I do, right? I mean, it's a huge blessing. I mean, God's blessed me with this, letting me do the thing that I love to do. So, all right, here's a book and here's a book. This book is Tolstoy short stories. It's actually entitled The Death of, it's The Death of Ivan Ilyich and Other Stories, right? So this is a book of short stories written by Tolstoy. You don't have to be interested in this, right? Here's a book by Oswald Bayer, who is the absolute, hands down, leading theologian of Luther in the modern times, Oswald Bayer. It's called Theology, the Lutheran Way. It's really Luther, right? So, two very different books. When I sit down to read these books, I need to make sure I don't read this book like it's this. Because like, what am I going to do here? I'm going to just open up to some story, whichever one I'm reading. May as well start with The Death of Ivan Ilyich, which, by the way, if you're ever interested in reading Tolstoy, that's the place to start. It's his greatest short novel, whatever. That's just opinion. I'm going to start at the beginning of it. No surprise there, right? 1883, 20 October. Today I was taken to the provincial board for examination. The opinions were divided. They debate. Okay, so I'm going to start there. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to read there. I'm going to read every line until I get to the end, right? And I'm not going to read the end first, probably, unless I'm one of those people, right? The first time, at least the first time through. Now, when you pick up an academic textbook, you are not looking at a novel. And so the worst way to read an academic textbook is to open it up and skip all that sort of distracting wordy part at the beginning, otherwise known as the contents or the introduction, introduction, and more editor's introduction, translator's preface, author's preface. Wow, this book's getting shorter all the time. Introduction, I give it a nod. Let's find chapter 1 though, right? That's what I want to do. I'm sure the introduction's important. Chapter 1. Luther speaks in different writings and contexts of the object and enactment of theology as of its subject matter, and the manner in which we speak and live it. Now, then I just start there and I novel it until I get to the end, armed with my trusty highlighter, highlighting whatever stands out. What stands out? I don't know, just whatever does. I'll just highlight it. Then when I get done, I have like a whole book with so many highlights in it, it's useless to me because the highlights are maybe more things are highlighted than what's in the than not. How do you even deal with that? So you have to remember, nobody writes a book like this waiting to give the end away, right? It's not like you're reading a novel and somebody who writes an academic book is like, they're expecting you just like a page turner, right? It's okay to know the end. So here's what you do with an academic book. Number one, if you want to retain, remember, you want to retain, that doesn't mean absolute memory of everything that's in that book. It never means that when it's a textbook. So what the first thing you do is, this is going to sound stupid, is you take a really hard look at the table of contents, get an idea of what is in this book. So you're getting familiar with it. The next step is, you can come back to it. The next step is you scan over the introduction. The next step is you go to the back, if it's written that way, and you scan over the conclusion. Now what you're doing is you're slowly building a picture of what this book is like. You can do other things like go to the index. You can do all this in like 30 minutes. You go to the index and see what kind of stuff is talked about, who's talked about, kind of find something that you're just personally interested in or a name or something in the index, and maybe just go read that for a second, just to see what's there. Then you go back and, provided you read the introduction, you go back to chapter 1 and you read the introductory paragraph, and then you look at the headings of that chapter. So now you know where it starts and where it's going. And you can do little things like read the introductory sentences on those under those headings. And now what you've done, it sounds like a lot of time, I know. But see, if you do that, then you just sort of rinse and repeat for every chapter. If you do that, you're not reading this book like a novel to be like, what's going to happen next? What's going to happen next? Well, what's going to happen next? They're going to give you more information. But it's going to be an argument, not a narrative, right? Making a case for something. So you're not reading a story, so don't read it like a story. And then you go back. Now, when you read, number one, you're going to have way more retention because everything you're encountering, you're not encountering for the first time like you are in here. You're encountering things that you at least know the roadmap because you've looked at the headings and stuff like that. So you know the roadmap, where it started, where it starts and where it ends. And what you're going to find is you have way more retention and understanding as you're reading along. And you're going to read faster. And you're going to be able to use a highlighter with like some intentionality more than random. But again, it's because you know what's coming to some degree. You don't have to master it. And then, so again, this sounds like you're like, I don't have time for that. Well, but see, the thing is you do, because you count that as sort of part of your reading. And, you don't have to apply this like the Medes. It's not the law of the Medes and the Persians, but that's how you read an academic book. You sort of take it apart, you get familiar with it, then you read it. And when you read it, it's impossible that you won't remember and retain it better. It becomes impossible. That doesn't mean, again, that you're going to memorize the whole thing or all of a sudden, like, you have photographic memory. You just don't. I can promise you don't have photographic memory. I get students who are like, I have photographic memory. I can remember there was a word, like the word therapist was on page 135. I'm like, yeah, you know what? That's called memory. It's not really photographic memory. It's just called memory. So provided you don't have photographic memory, what you're doing is you're building the structure of this book, and then you're filling it in, and then you'll actually know when to highlight things or maybe not highlight things. And if you, so in other words, before I read any sort of book like this, I spend as much time as I have. I might not have a ton of time. I'll spend like maybe 30 minutes right off the bat. Like maybe if I was a student right at the beginning of the semester, maybe this book, I don't have to read this book maybe till week 8, but maybe I'll take all my books in one day and just do what I just described. And then when it comes time to read them, I won't read them like a novel. And I will almost certainly retain far more, be able to write a better review or a better analysis or take an exam. I'm just telling you, it works. And you learn, like you just sort of do what I said. You can adopt it or not. You can tweak it, accordingly. But I'm telling you that works. And almost certainly, what doesn't work is just page 1, start reading the sentences, and finally at the end you're done. And then at the end you're going like this, trying to think, does this count as reading or not? I'm not positive, right? Am I scanning, right? What am I going to say on how much the percentage did I read? Was this still, you know what I mean? All those questions go out the window because you're reading more efficiently. And reading more efficiently means reading fast. Now, not like speed reading, but you're reading more efficiently, you're remembering, retaining. It's a better way to read an academic book, and it's not as painful.